Mom said. "You're an embarrassment to this family. We want nothing to do with you." I said. "Good luck paying your mortgage without me." 2 weeks later they called me in tears. When my mother screamed at me, her voice sharp and jagged with fury. "You're an embarrassment to this family. We want nothing to do with you." I didn't flinch. I just stood there, arms crossed, and stared back at her. The silence stretched between us, brittle and waiting to snap. And then I said it, the words that had been simmering beneath my tongue for years. "Good luck paying your mortgage without me." That was the moment everything changed. Let me take you back a bit. I'm Thomas, a name that, in my family, became synonymous with the disappointment. I was always the scapegoat, the one who got the blame when things went wrong, the one who never quite measured up to my younger brother Mike's potential, or my sister Emily's dramatic flair for getting attention. But while they chased their whims and squandered money, I was the one quietly bailing them out. I paid off my parents' debts more times than I can count. I covered the mortgage on the family home, helped Emily with her bills after her messy divorce, even lent Mike money to get his business off the ground, money I knew I'd never see again. I did it out of loyalty. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Deep down, I think I was hoping they'd see me, just once, as something other than the family failure. But no matter how much I sacrificed, it was never enough. The first signs of trouble surfaced when I noticed odd withdrawals from the joint account I used to help with household expenses. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $300 there, but then larger sums disappeared without explanation. When I asked Mom about it, she brushed me off, saying it was for emergencies, or repairs, that mysteriously never seemed to materialize. I didn't push. I should have. But years of biting my tongue had taught me to swallow my suspicions. The final straw came 2 weeks ago. Emily, ever the queen of theatrics, staged a family intervention during a heated dinner. She accused me of being lazy, ungrateful, and, her favorite insult, a burden. She said I was holding the family back. That's when my mother, always eager to jump to Emily's defense, delivered the coup de grace. "You're an embarrassment to this family," she snapped. "We want nothing to do with you." I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of years spent being everyone's punching bag. For the first time in my life, I didn't try to explain myself, didn't beg for understanding. I just locked eyes with her and said, "Good luck paying your mortgage without me." Her face blanched, her lips parted as if to protest, but I was already walking out the door. The quiet of the night swallowed me as I stepped into the street. My heart was pounding, my breath uneven, but a strange sense of liberation was creeping over me. I was done. They could fend for themselves. But as I stood there under the streetlight, one thought kept circling in my mind. They won't last 2 weeks without me. 2 weeks without a single call. At first, it felt eerie, almost unnatural. My phone, which used to light up with frantic messages and guilt-laden voicemails, stayed silent. I half expected my mother to storm up to my apartment door or for Emily to launch a public pity party on Facebook, shaming me for abandoning my responsibilities. But there was nothing. Just silence. I found myself checking the online mortgage portal late at night, more out of curiosity than concern. The payments I had been quietly making for years were already overdue. I imagined the bills piling up, the notices arriving in the mail. The realization that their golden ticket had finally been punched. Still, part of me thought, they'll figure it out. They'll find a way, right? Wrong. It was a Saturday when I got the first real glimpse of the chaos I'd set in motion. A friend of mine, Marcus, who worked in real estate, called me out of the blue. "Hey, Tom. Weird question. Are your folks selling the house?" I felt my stomach twist. "Not that I know of," I said. "Why?" He hesitated. "Well, there's been chatter. Rumor is, the bank's pushing foreclosure. And a few agents are circling, thinking they can scoop it up cheap." I clenched the phone tighter. "So, it's happening already." The house, the one my parents swore was the family's legacy, the one I'd poured tens of thousands into just to keep them afloat, was circling the drain. They were too proud to ask for help, but too incompetent to fix their own mess. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. Part of me wanted to call them, to gloat, to say, "I told you so." Another part, the stubborn, wounded part, wanted them to twist in the storm of their own making. The next morning, a new text lit up my phone. From Emily. Short, desperate, "Please call me." I didn't. I let it hang there, like bait. By the end of the day, the voicemails started. My mother's voice, shaky, brittle. "Thomas, please, we need to talk. It's important." Followed by another, then another, each one more frantic. I could almost see them pacing the living room, the walls closing in. But I wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. By the third day of silence, their pride began to fracture. The messages shifted from guilt to veiled threats. My mother's voice on the latest voicemail was tight, brittle like a porcelain cup under too much pressure. "Thomas, if you don't help us, we'll lose everything. Do you understand that? Everything. The bank's already breathing down our necks." I listened to the message 3 times before I deleted it. I could hear the panic underneath her words, but there was no apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done, just an expectation that I'd come running, like I always did. That evening, I took a long walk around the neighborhood. The air was crisp, almost biting, but I didn't mind. As I walked, I let my mind wander, piecing together the fragments of my life with them. The sacrifices, the ridicule, the way I'd let them strip me down to nothing under the guise of family loyalty. It was strange how quickly the fog lifted once I stepped away. I could see them for who they were now. Manipulative. Entitled. Desperate. The next morning, Marcus called again. "Hey, Tom. I just got word, the bank's moving fast. They're about to send out the default notice. If your parents don't come up with the money in the next few days, the house is as good as gone." I felt a flicker of satisfaction, but it was tempered by something else. Guilt, maybe. Or a stubborn echo of responsibility. But I silenced it. This was their doing. They had treated me like a lifeline, a bottomless ATM, and laughed behind my back. If I'd bailed them out now, it would only teach them that I'd always come running. I spent the afternoon watching the messages stack up. My mother tried everything, pleas, demands, even threats to cut me off from the family. As if I'd be missing something precious. Emily's texts were more straightforward. "Please, Tom. Just talk to Mom. She's a wreck. We'll figure something out." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. For a second, I imagined myself typing out an apology, offering to help, maybe even wiring the money. But then I remembered her voice, the venom in it when she'd called me an embarrassment. The way they'd all sat there, silent, as she tore me down. I put the phone down and turned it off. They'd dug this grave. It was time for them to lie in it. The next few days passed in a strange kind of calm, at least for me. But I knew, from the flurry of missed calls and voicemails, that calm was the last thing my family was feeling. Their facade was crumbling fast, and from what Marcus had told me, the house was teetering on the edge of foreclosure. I spent my time quietly gathering every bit of leverage I could. The bank's online portal showed the delinquent payments in stark red numbers, and I knew the clock was ticking. A few well-placed emails to real estate agents I knew, a conversation or two with Marcus about local property investors. It was almost too easy. I wasn't just stepping back this time. I was paving the way for their downfall. That Friday evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I finally answered one of my mother's calls. Her voice, hoarse and raw from days of crying and begging, cracked through the receiver. "Thomas, please. We can't lose the house. It's your father's legacy." I closed my eyes, letting her words sink in. Legacy. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. That legacy was mine to keep alive, Mom. And you treated it like an afterthought? She was silent for a moment, then whispered, "We didn't mean what we said." I almost laughed. "Of course you didn't. But it doesn't matter anymore." Her breath caught. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said, my voice steady and cold, "that I'm done. You can't treat me like dirt, take everything I give, and then expect me to come running when the well runs dry. You told me I was an embarrassment. Well, now you'll get to see how life works without your so-called embarrassment holding it all together. She tried to speak, but I cut her off. I've already spoken to a few people. Once the foreclosure is finalized, they'll make offers. Better ones than you'll ever get. Maybe they'll even let you stay, for a price. Her voice broke then. You wouldn't. I would. And I will. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment before putting it down. For the first time in my life, I felt a strange, potent mixture of guilt and liberation. I wasn't just walking away, I was ensuring they faced the full weight of their actions. And for once, I wasn't the fool. Over the next week, I kept my distance. I didn't answer their calls, didn't respond to their increasingly desperate texts. Instead, I watched the slow, inevitable collapse from afar, like a spectator at a demolition site. Marcus kept me updated. They're scrambling, he said one day over lunch. A couple of agents have sniffed out the foreclosure and are circling like sharks. Your parents don't have a prayer unless they come up with a miracle. I nodded, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. They won't. They burned every bridge they had. He leaned back in his chair. You know, you're not obligated to make this so clean-cut. You could let them flounder for a while, but eventually you'll have to decide how far you're willing to push. I considered that. Part of me, the old Thomas, wanted to soften the blow. To step in at the last minute, save the house, and play the hero. But that part had been trampled too many times. Now, all I felt was a cool, calculated sense of justice. They'll figure it out, I said, my tone flat. Or they won't. By midweek, the first foreclosure notice arrived at their door. I imagined my mother's face as she opened it, the sick realization that this wasn't just a bluff, that the house she'd always believed would be hers was slipping through her fingers. I could almost hear her voice, shrill with panic, blaming everyone but herself. I'd always been the one to pick up the pieces. But this time, I wasn't just stepping back, I was tipping over the dominoes myself. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel powerless. I felt free. A week after the foreclosure notice landed on their doorstep, my phone rang. This time, I let it ring for a long moment before finally picking up. It was my mother. Her voice was different, hoarse, shaky, a mixture of desperation and something I hadn't heard in years, fear. Thomas, she whispered, as if speaking too loudly would shatter whatever fragile pride she had left. Please, please, just talk to me. I stayed silent. I know we've made mistakes, she continued, her words tumbling out in a rush. But we're your family. We're losing everything. The house, it's almost gone. They're saying we have less than a week before it's taken from us. I could feel the weight of her words settling over me, but I refused to let it break me. I thought about every sleepless night I'd spent worrying about their debts, every cruel word they'd hurled at me when I tried to help, every time they turned their backs on me when I needed them most. And I realized I wasn't going to fold this time. You said I was an embarrassment, I said quietly. You told me you wanted nothing to do with me. There was a long pause, filled with static and shallow breathing. I didn't mean it, she finally said. I was angry. I was stupid. I felt something inside me twist. Whether it was bitterness or regret, I couldn't tell. It's too late, Mom. You made your choice. She broke then. I could hear her sobbing softly, her voice cracking as she tried to pull herself together. Please, Tom. I'm begging you. We'll lose everything. I closed my eyes. No, Mom. You've already lost me. And then, calmly and without another word, I ended the call. As the silence settled over me, I realized I wasn't just cutting off a lifeline, I was reclaiming my own. After that call, there was no turning back. My mother's pleas haunted the edges of my thoughts for days, but I silenced them each time they tried to creep in. This wasn't just about a house, about money, about pride, it was about finally standing up for myself. I knew they were scrambling. Marcus called me again, his voice low and careful. They've contacted every agent in the area, even tried to stall the foreclosure with a last-minute payment. But it's not enough. The bank's already moving on it. By next week, it'll be listed. I thanked him, my voice steady. Make sure they don't get a chance to stall it any longer. Let's push this through. Marcus hesitated. You sure you want to do this? I didn't answer right away. I looked around my small, cluttered apartment, the stacks of unpaid favors, the years of silent sacrifices, the fragments of myself I'd given away to people who never truly cared. Then I said, I'm sure. Over the next few days, I made a few calls of my own. I let the right people know that the house was about to be up for grabs, and I made sure they knew exactly who they were dealing with. I even tipped off an old acquaintance who specialized in flipping distressed properties. He was thrilled, and I knew he'd be relentless. The news spread quickly. Within days, offers were coming in, none high enough to save my parents, all perfectly positioned to seal their fate. It was cold, calculated, even cruel. But it was mine. I wasn't just walking away. I was making sure the door slammed shut behind me. The day the foreclosure became public, I felt a strange calmness settle over me. It was almost surreal, knowing that the house where I'd once heard laughter and seen holiday decorations in the windows was now little more than a line on an auction list. But beneath that calm was a quiet sense of vindication, of finally reclaiming something I hadn't even known I'd lost, my self-respect. The calls from my mother and Emily didn't stop. If anything, they became more frantic. Desperate. I could tell from the tone of their voices, from the texts that came in at all hours, that reality was finally crashing in on them. The house was no longer theirs. Their safety net, the one they had dangled so carelessly while they mocked and belittled me, was gone. One voicemail stood out. My mother's voice was unrecognizable, raw with exhaustion and panic. Thomas, please. The house is gone. We're being evicted. We don't know where to go. Please, just talk to me. Please. I listened to it once, then deleted it. That afternoon, Marcus sent me a message. The bank's closing the deal. Your parents are out by Friday. I sat in silence, staring out the window as rain began to streak down the glass. It felt like poetic justice, the slow unraveling of everything they had built on my back. But as much as I wanted to savor the moment, a knot of guilt twisted in my stomach. Was I really this heartless? Had they turned me into someone I didn't recognize? But then I remembered that dinner, the laughter, the mockery, the way my mother's words had sliced through me like a blade. You're an embarrassment to this family. They hadn't just hurt me, they had used me, drained me dry, and then cast me aside. That Friday, I drove by the house. It was a pitiful sight. Boxes stacked on the lawn, hastily packed belongings shoved into trash bags. My mother was standing by the front steps, her face pale and pinched, while Emily stood nearby, red-eyed but still trying to look defiant. Even Mike was there, his usually smug expression replaced by one of genuine fear. As I sat in my car across the street, they didn't see me. I watched them argue with the moving crew, plead with the bank representative who was waiting to change the locks. It was a scene of chaos, a family finally tasting the consequences of their own arrogance. I could have rolled down the window, said something, made them see me. But I didn't. I simply watched in silence, feeling a strange mix of pity and grim satisfaction. They were finally experiencing what it was like to be powerless, to feel discarded and unwanted. The house I had saved so many times before was now just another property on the market, waiting to be stripped, renovated, and sold to someone who didn't know the tangled history behind its walls. I drove away as the rain began to fall harder, leaving behind the wreckage of my family's false security. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running to their rescue. I wasn't the scapegoat. I wasn't the fool. I was free. A week after the house was gone, I woke up to find my phone buzzing nonstop. Messages, calls, voicemails. It was a tidal wave of desperation. My mother's tone, which had once dripped with scorn and superiority, now cracked under the weight of panic and grief. Emily's texts were shorter, almost pleading. Even Mike, who had always hovered on the sidelines with his smug smirk, sent a clipped message. Call Mom. She's not doing well. I ignored them all. I needed space. Time to breathe. To feel the weight of what I'd done, and to feel the lightness, too. It was like shaking off a heavy coat I'd worn for far too long. But one message stuck with me. It wasn't from my mother or Emily or Mike. It was from Marcus. They're looking for somewhere to stay. Rumor is, your mom tried to get a loan from one of those cash advance sharks. It didn't go well. That hit me harder than I expected. For years, I'd been the one they turned to, the one who fixed the financial messes they created. And now, without me, they were flailing, sinking in waters they never bothered to learn how to swim in. A part of me, the old Thomas, felt the old pull to step in, to save them one last time. But the new me, the one who had finally clawed his way out from under their weight, refused. I knew they were circling rock bottom. I knew my mother's pride would stop her from asking anyone else for help. But pride couldn't pay rent. Pride couldn't keep the lights on. Pride couldn't buy groceries. And pride wouldn't stop the eviction notices piling up at their temporary motel. I made one final move. It was subtle, calculated. I tipped off the real estate agent Marcus knew, the one who had a reputation for swooping in on distressed sales, to make an aggressive offer on the house. Not just to buy it, but to lock it down, fast. I didn't even care if it sold for pennies on the dollar. I wanted it out of their hands. I wanted them to know, this is what it feels like when the safety net is gone. The deal closed within days. Marcus called me that evening, a hint of hesitation in his voice. It's done. The house is officially sold. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Thanks, Marcus. I appreciate everything. Are you sure about this, Tom? He asked quietly. There's no going back after this. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years of resentment, betrayal, and silent suffering lift off my shoulders. I'm sure, I said. They made their choice. Now it's time for me to live my life. That night, I slept better than I had in years. I didn't dream of confrontations, of arguments, of guilt and obligation. Instead, I dreamed of quiet, of peace. I woke up to find my phone eerily silent. No calls, no texts. Just a calm, empty screen. It was the silence I had longed for, the silence of finally being free. A few days later, I received one last voicemail from my mother. Her voice was broken, barely audible. I hope you're happy, she whispered. We've lost everything. You're no longer part of this family. I deleted it without a second thought. In that moment, I realized something profound. I had spent my entire life trying to earn love, trying to prove my worth to people who only saw me as a safety net. I had let their needs define my existence. But not anymore. For the first time in years, I felt light. No guilt, no resentment. Just peace. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that loyalty doesn't mean surrender. And sometimes, the only way to break free from a toxic family is to let it collapse on its own. I didn't just walk away, I watched them fall, and I finally found myself standing tall.